Gonzalez. I'm obsessed with making games, and today we're going to talk about prioritize what you're doing as you level up. You're in level one, trying to get to level two, and there's a lot of learning, and we want to avoid tutorial hell. We don't want you to be learning for 5 years, um, or maybe if that's your goal, then that's fine. But I want to make sure that you have a plan and you can execute on that because you only time is the one thing that you can't buy back, right? You're either 20, 40, 60, 30, whatever your age. You might be 14 or 12. My first goal is to make sure that there's no excuse for anyone that watches my videos about making games. There's no way you can lose because I'm giving you all the tips to avoid pitfalls and be able to finish your games and finish them faster so that you can get better and better faster rather than the alternative, which is doing it on your own for 10 years and realizing you made a bunch of mistakes you wish you would have known. Okay. Because Reddit and YouTube is filled with those. And as many times as people give regrets, it doesn't help the next person. Because I've seen time after time developers choosing to go the long route, the hard route, all on their own and wanting to learn it on their own. Okay. So if you are not prideful, this video is for you. If you're prideful, then sorry, you might want to work on that first before you want to get better. So there's someone that mentioned a question on the YouTube channel. We'll address that first, and that will go right into priorities and addressing these issues because I want to do this for anyone that is watching this, regardless of their age, regardless of their background. Wherever you are at, you can adjust to go in the direction you want and as fast as you want. The question was along the lines of, should I first clear my coding basics in DSA before moving to engines like Unity and Unreal, or do you have any other tips? And so I just put it to ChatGPT, even though ChatGPT is not like the absolute truth or any truth for all. They're probably lying, but I think it gives you a good start to think about if you want to make games quickly or want to become a professional. Although my take with this is that nowadays, you regardless of what happens, if you wanna, if you're good at your job at making games and you can't find a job, my advice would be make a game. And if you can't make a game, then why would someone hire you, right? Or maybe you're an artist and you need a developer to make a game. Then find a developer and decide to make a game, right? Like partner up. You can do those things. Oftentimes, developers can't find artists, and sometimes it depends because you have a game that you want to make and someone else has a game they want to make, and oftentimes it's hard to swallow again your pride and actually make something that you might not like. The main thing is that regardless, if you can't find a job, then you can make your own studio and give yourself the job and prove that you can do it, right? So there's multiple ways, and this is applicable for anything. But in general, um, you can figure it out on your own. But about coding, I graduated with a bachelor in computer science, and so and even then, after all of the classes and understanding, um, I could have done better at learning. But because I was going through a university and a bachelor's, I had to take other classes that are generals that I wish I didn't have to take because I wanted to focus on the computer science. And even then, I was also working on other projects on the side, like animation projects, game projects, short films, and stuff like that, that I really was passionate about at the time, and that took a lot of time. But I wish if if your goal is to learn computer science, you don't have to take the regular like route of a bachelor in computer science, or you can take one of those tech programs or online, or even if you have a tech program close to you that doesn't require the generals. Even though I do agree that like math is good, and sometimes like science or like physics is good, because it's a lot of math that's applied math. So sometimes those are good because math for me is very useful. Linear algebra is very useful for games and coding. And now we have ChatGPT that can help. But even then, like linear algebra applies a lot to games and vector math and whatnot. Um, so that so it's kind of hard, right? Because I went the traditional route. I went to school and I took all that. But even after all that, I was like, someone could be watching YouTube, googling online, and learn everything that I learned. There's some things that maybe are not learned. Uh, I met a lot of people during the course of that time. I worked on projects with multiple people that later referred me to other companies or other people to employ me, and that's how I found a lot of my jobs at first was just referrals. Uh, and so, had I not gone to school and made those connections, I would have the careers that I have today. But you can do that through networking, right? So you can network, you can meet other people, you can make games with other people. It's just that if you're very introvert and it's hard for you to reach out to people, then maybe the traditional route is the way to go. But let's say you are here, you're leveling up, you're like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm gonna start today or tomorrow, or this is like a week later, and I'm making games. Okay, my first question: when and what you want to do? Do you want to work for a AAA studio? Do you want to build your own game? And even if you don't know those answers, like what is your immediate goal for like the next year or two? Like, you want to make a game by this year, or do you want to make a game next year? You can make a game in a month. You can make, like, just going work doing game jams gets you prototypes, and that's a very good habit. So the question is, what are you trying to do? Where do you want to get in? Um, and let's say you have no idea, right? Okay, maybe I don't know if I want to work for a AAA studio or I want to make my own studio. First, I want to know, do I have what it takes? Or is this something I want to pursue? I'm just doing it as a hobby. So if you're doing it as a hobby and you don't care about money, you need to learn how to make games and you need to figure out how fast you can make them. So you need to find a structure, something that's frequent, a schedule, something like, I every night from 8 to 10, I'm working on this hobby and I want to have fun. Okay, so like let's structure it down. And if you need to learn how to code, then that's maybe where you start. Oftentimes here, ChatGPT is offering, like basic language. It might be better if you just learn, if you're using Unity, that you use C# and use Unreal. You're just learning blueprints, but you might want to do C++. But even then, it's not necessary. You can learn as you go. It's just going to be a little bit trickier. The main thing is, are you a logical thinker? Is that as a game developer, you will have to debug. You would have to figure out how things are going wrong when you do exactly what you think should happen, right? Like, you created code and it's not behaving the way you think. And the reason is because there's something that you're not connecting. And then when you're working with people, other people might be doing things that you don't know about that will affect the code that you're running. And so debugging is everyday life. So if you are struggling to find an answer to a problem, that is something to take into account. Because when I went to school and in computer science, and we had projects and we have to do, every time we had to submit a project, you had to make sure it passed a certain amount of tests. You had to run it, and you had the deadline, and people are racking their brains because you have till midnight, or you have, the deadline is coming up, and you're spending like the last 24 hours figuring out why it's not passing the last test, right? Or it's passing this test but not this test. What's broken? Or how can I speed up my code? Or where's the issue at? And you're debugging for hours. And so 90% of the time, sometimes you're spending on a bug, and sometimes it's just a little mistake. And when you find it, you're like, oh, you're so dumb. And it really racks your brain. But that is the gig. I know it's frustrating. So what if that's not what you like to do, right? You want to make games, but you don't want to do the hard stuff. Then maybe you want to find money and pay other people to make your games. Maybe that's the thing you want to do. Or you want to be a game designer. And so again, you need a lot of money to pay other people to do what you want. And whether it's successful or not, it's up to you. The main thing is, yes, coding can help you. I would say you don't need to take the traditional route if it's not like the future you want. Because even if you're a computer science major, there are better paying jobs than making games. You can be an engineer, you can work for, and even engineers within the space are software engineers are really well paid. There's a lot of options for getting paid in general as computer science. And so I didn't make games because it's the most lucrative. I did it because I love it. And now I'm learning that there's more options. I want to give an example of maybe a career path that you might think, okay, maybe you do go the route where you go to work for a studio. You want to work for a studio. So you need to make games for your portfolio. You need to show that you have the skills that you need. And so you need to say, okay, like what are some portfolio pieces? And in here we talked about last time, or in a previous video, we went through, okay, ChatGPT, I want to use Unity. I'm a developer. What are things I need to learn to make a game like Marvel Rivals? And I asked for 100 things, and you could just go, and you have the list. Okay, so you have 100 things. Are you going to take 100 days to learn 100 things? Or are you going to take 200 days? And if you take 200 days, that's almost a year. So it'll be a long routine. For example, Unity scene management. I have a video on that. We talked about it. Unity game objects and components. Like, I can make a video about each one of these transforms, and there's tons of stuff that we talked about, right? Lighting and shadow, and some of this stuff I don't even know to the full extent, right? I've learned a lot about tags and layers and collisions, matrix, and so that racks a lot of people's brain because you have rigid body, you have kinematic and non-kinematic objects. But there's a lot to learn, and so. But if you want to work for a studio and you know all these things, as you like, hey, look at my game. You can play and you can see how it does this and that. And if you want to play, you want to work for a studio that makes card games, then you can't be making side scroller. You gotta make card games, right? And so you also gotta think about the genre that you want to get into. And if you don't know, you should explore the genres. But you gotta understand that if you're gonna work for a company, you probably want to figure out what games you want to work for. And that's just the way it works. I know it's tough because oftentimes you want to just be like, I'm a game developer. I'll work on any genre. It's like as long as I get a job. But they don't want that. They want someone that knows because each genre has its own tips and tricks and pitfalls. Also, you might work for a AAA studio and then realize like, hey, I can do this on my own. Like, why am I like? You might be 1 out of 100, right? Like, and then you realize like, I could make a game on my own. Like, I just partner up with my buddy. He's a developer. The artist, and I have some game design skills, or he does, or they do, and you just start. You're like you've seen other people do the producer roles, um, the producer, um, the director role, and you're like, well, we can do that. And so it depends. Some people don't. Some people just prefer working for a studio and a big group and have fun doing that. But maybe you are like, and so that's how Marvel Snap, like Second Dinner Studio. If you look at this, designing Marvel Snap, um, Ben, I think it's Ben Brode, and Hamilton. So those are the two. They worked in Blizzard, and they're like, "Hey, I like making card games." And he's a developer. He was a game designer, and so they built the Second Dinner. They pitched ideas. They had connections, obviously, but they had rep because they worked on Hearthstone, right? So they worked on Hearthstone. They realized like he loves making card games, and he came up with his own. He branched out. He went with his friend, and they made a card game for mobile. He goes over all the ideas, how it all started, but like oftentimes that might be the route you want to take, or you might not even like you might not ever work in a AAA studio because you'll be making enough on your own, right? Because you want to have complete um, control over the decisions of the game. But why am I talking about this? Because okay, let's say depending on your goals, okay, so you have your age first, like you are where you're at. Doesn't matter the past. You're here, or you have your age. If your goal is to work for a company, right, then you need to build a portfolio. Well, how much experience do you have, and what are you trying to bridge the gap with? And that's why I have endgame devs, because I endgame devs is specifically where I do one-on-ones and I sit down with you and we chat about your goals, where you're at, and what you're gonna do to get to those goals. Because that is the easiest way for me to know exactly what your situation is and where you want to go. So I have that. I have a community where I can help people one-on-one and help them reach their goals and have accountability. But let's say you are 17 and you want to pursue career, maybe coding. Yeah, learning the basic codes would be good to see if you have a knack for it. I have, and if you want to do this while also learning, okay. So Jason Wayman, he is really good at coding. He has a lot of videos, and I think he has some playlists on specifics like I don't know. Sometimes he had like Unity 101. These fundamentals is a good one. Just transform tools, spawning objects, saving data, debuggers, dynamic. He has a really good understanding of. He's really talented and he has a lot of experience with coding. So he's really good for if you want to learn how to code, yeah, for games. He has some courses. I would say the only thing is that don't expect a lot more than having good code, right? Like he has amazing games that he can help you make. The main thing is that he doesn't finish sometimes, and so some of the courses are incomplete. But for the most part, like if you want to get better at coding, Jason Wayman is really good. Uh, yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. He's really awesome. Um, and and so I've had some of his stuff, and I've seen it, and I still have access to it. And I, if I ever want to get better at coding, I just look at his stuff, and he has a lot of awesome code that I really learn from it. Should you learn how to code? Yes. How much is it depend on up to what your timeline is. If you're and where you want to get. If you want to make games, you can get started and not know anything about coding. You have ChatGPT, you have YouTube, you have Google. There's a lot of resources out there to help you learn how to code. There's courses, um, but if you want to have a formal understanding, you can have even again YouTube, Udemy. There's courses on just coding basics and learning. for loops, and like things that you need. And ChatGPT can give you an idea of like bullet points of things you have to learn, and you're like, okay, what is that? What does it mean? And learn principles. That is the first stage. It's like, do you need to learn how to code? Yes. How much is up to you and the need of your goals? Like, how fast do you want to get there? Because, like I said, we're gonna talk about it. Okay, so let's say Marvel Rivals. I don't know anything. You can go in here with this Unity template. We got, Unity 6, an LTS version, and here we have the main scene where the player is at. I can go in here, the F. Here's my controller player. I don't know on this side, but so then let's say I was like, oh, look, how do they do this? So this is just an empty transform. You can do more of this, right? And so you just use an empty transform and that works. So you have the player, and in here you can say, oh, so you have a player input. So this is for the input. This is like WASD. So it's like, how do you do that? So you right click on it, edit script, and you can look at it, and I can read, I can figure it out. If I want to change things, there's probably a menu option that changes these aspects. So you can have settings, but in here you'll start. Okay, so let's say, and it's hard for me to. This is the part where it's hard because I've already went through school and learned some of these things. But most of the time, like even with formal education, some of the things are specific. Like in Unity, after coding in Unity so much, I feel like I've backtracked. Like I understand more things about Unity and even in Unreal when I worked in Unreal, than I do now. Like I've learned a lot, but the problem is that I haven't done a lot of the things that I used to do in school, and so like software engineer, that stuff. Like I would have a hard time making my own things because the code is it's event driven, and so you're basically like just very like you're using existing code, and so you're not starting from scratch. You're not building software. You're not doing all the crazy stuff. Like you are basically using Unity's APIs, and then you're just trying to figure out how to use those APIs to do stuff. So a lot of times you're like, oh, what is all this? I have no idea. But like this is just like how Unity does it, right? Like there's you type this tooltip, and this is a tooltip that comes up. You put it in these parentheses, and then you put quotation marks, and it's a string, and this is what will pull up. So in here, you have these tooltips. So if I hover over sensitivity, see, so that's the tooltip. But you learn those things by looking at the code. We start, and so there's Unity has tutorials on what the start method, late update, what these things are that you can research. You can take beginner courses, but I will go over some of this stuff and like how to modify things. In the next few videos, we're gonna go through all these. But my main takeaway is so we have like, what is your goal, right? Are you trying to get into games quickly? Where are you trying to get? When do you want to do that, right? If you want to make a game in a year, for example, and you've never made games, okay, let's prototype. Let's make a prototype. How fast can you make a prototype? And then for the next year, you're not going to build the game that you want to make in a year. What you're going to do is you're going to build 6 different prototypes for the next 6 months. So every month you're going to build a prototype, figure things out, or even less, right? Like, what can you make in 2 weeks? Also, the other question is, how much time are you putting each day? And I mean each day. So you have 7 days, right? How many of those days are you gonna, and how much time are you gonna put in there? And that will determine. Okay, so are you having 10-hour weeks, 2-hour weeks, 20-hour weeks? And that's like how much you're learning, because you can spend an hour or two learning each topic, and if you have 100, you have 200 hours. And so, okay, where are you gonna put those 200 hours? Then there's the hours that you don't know about. That comes with experience. And so let's say you have 400 hours worth of stuff to learn, and you want to make a game in a year. So you need to learn 400 hours first, schedule those within your next 6 to 10 months. Where are you going to put in those 400 hours? And what are you going to do those 400 hours, right? So we said we have 100 things, and each one's going to take an hour, and so, or 2, and so that's 200 hours. And then the other 200 hours are for when things break down, because they will. And when you don't understand something, and you need to take an extra 2 hours to learn that or to fix it. And so you're doubling, because that is usually what happens. So then you schedule and you figure out, okay, 400 hours. If I do 10 hours each week, and you can take out a calculator and you can ask ChatGPT, it gives you the math super easy. But I'm just saying that's about 9 to 10 months. So if you work 10 hours a week, it'll take you about 9 to 10 months or 40 weeks to do that. Okay. So if you dedicate 10 hours every week, in 9 to 10 months you will be ready to make your game within, and then you have to make your game, or as you go along, you might take 8 months to realize, or in at 8 months you hit an epiphany, or you're like outside those 10 hours you're thinking about your game as you sleep or something. You start thinking about what you want to make. And so as you're learning these things, you're like, oh, but I'm going to tweak it this way for my game, or this, I'm trying to learn this because my game requires this. And so you're learning the system mechanics that you need to implement for your future game. And if you don't have one, that's fine. You can do game jams. But at the end of the 8, 9 months, you probably know everything you need for your game because you've been learning it. In here, like, see, I need to learn how to skin character customization, save load, player settings. And so if I'm spending time, like 2 to 4 hours every day, or 2 to 4 hours to learn each of these things, and I'm actually learning it, you can add it to your game, right? And so it's just a matter of like, if you're going to use Unity netcode or Fusion or Mirror or Network, there's a lot of multiplayer stuff that you got to learn. That's a whole other thing. AI and enemies, because you learn AI and enemies, single player, piece of cake. There's like Emerald AI, there's a bunch of tools that do it, but multiplayer, that's another beast. And so there's a lot of things that multiplayer just adds so much complexity. If you're gonna stick to single player games, then you have a lot more time for polish. Okay, so now you have your goal, right? We have our 10, 40 weeks that we know what we're doing. We have a list of things we need to learn. We have the time allotted. I need to spend 10 hours every week. If you want to do it faster, you put in 20 hours a week. If you want to do it slower, 5 hours, whatever. That's your plan, your goals. And then it's a matter of just doing it, right? You plow through it, and you evaluate before you even finish this, but like, you want to make sure that things that you're learning help you achieve your goals, right? Because it's very generic right now. I have 100 things, and these might branch out to even more. So like, they're not all the things you need. But let's say I am learning, like, how do you learn how to do third-person character control? There's YouTube videos. There's templates. Like, again, we have this template we're going to go over and we're going to learn. We're going to see what we need to find. You have references. That's why I have, again, endgame devs, is so that you can find out the what. Like, what do I need to do? And when do I need to do it? Which is part of learning, but you also need to get in the code. Like, you need to learn how to code it. So maybe you do need to learn some code, but maybe not. So you have this player controller. And it's not a third person, it's a first person. So this character controller has a camera. We could probably try to adjust the camera. We would have to add animations. Like, when you have a first person controller, you don't have to worry too much about the animations. Whereas in third person, you have your player controller, you can see it more, and you'll have to do a lot of animation stuff, like the running and whatnot. Because right now you can see this is just like nothing. And you don't see anything. If you go to scenes, intro, don't save anything. If I click here, you'll see play, and you see how, like, there is no character, right? It's just a gun floating, and I just shoot. Okay, so you might say, okay, well, for cutting down scope, I'll do first person rather than third person, and that's how we'll do most of it. And we'll have abilities and whatnot. Figure out what you need to do, when you want to do it, and then lay out a map. And if you have a hard time doing that, you need accountability, or you are getting lost, join Endgame Devs. I'm here to help developers finish their games and get better at making games.